Hello, this is Real World Audio, and let's continue our Pure Darlings description. What are the design parameters, and what are the parts requirements, and what's the rationale behind them. So let's see. So we left off with the output transformer choices, and we have looked at the cheaper versions. If you want to deliberate, if you choose the add core, then it's a single output tab. So you can choose either an 8 ohm or 6 ohm, but it will not have both. So just choose one and choose wisely. And if you choose the Hammond, I think this is twice as much as the add core, but there you will have 16 ohm, 8 ohm and 4 ohm secondaries. So it will be a good choice for basically any kind of speaker you want to drive it from 4 to 16 ohms, although I don't really recommend 4 ohm. And this transformer, although in the cheaper, the budgeter category, it's 88 henries of inductance. So it's really high inductance, and it will have pretty substantial bass even for such a budget unit. To go with those transformers which really will make it shine, it will be either one of those units, either the Hashimoto or the Tango, ISO Tango transformers, and these will give you the option of multiple secondaries, but will cost you like really serious money, about $800 a pair, both of them, plus shipping from Japan. Yes. So that's pretty rough. And as you see, all of the choices are 10 kilo ohm primaries. So this is different from the Baby Darling, that in the Baby Darling version we are operating the power tubes with the same operating points that Bob Danielak created, and here we are operating it at that operating point where I have used my Darling amp. So at my operating point we are basically running it at 250 volts on the plate, around 20 milliamps of current, and with a 10 kilo ohm load. And Bob Danielak, he ran them about 235 volts or so on the plate. So he ran them a little lower in the plate voltage, and that would mean dropping the load to a little bit lower, maybe like an 8K load would be would keep a similar operating point or load line as I'm keeping with the 10K load, but he uses much lower loads, like 5K to 7K. I would recommend the 7K for the Baby Darling. But as you see here, this means when we use the 10K, this will mean a little less power, but also quite a bit less distortion. This will give you a very clean operating point. And what else? So I can recommend either of these options. And now let's have a look at the signal section. So one of the most important differences is the coupling capacitor. So instead of that DC link cap, which I recommended as the bare basic one for the Darling, if you are really strapped on a budget, if you can spare an extra few dollars, then really go for the Obligato. And if you want the best, then get a Miflex KPCU coupling cap. And you can do this in the Baby Darling version as well, but you see, like, it's $27 for each of these capacitors, so it's not the cheapest. And also, if you look for these caps, you can go for, you don't need to go with a 0.33 microfarad. You can go a smaller one, you can go maybe as low as 0.1 microfarad, and it's just under $20. It will be still fine. The 0.33 will give you a little fuller sound and richer bass, but the 0.1 microfarad will be okay as well, especially if you don't want to listen to very low frequencies. But if the deepest octave is important to you, and especially in the Pure Darling version, I really recommend to go with this value, because these output transformers, even this, they will be able to give you really like 20 hertz information, and even lower in the Pure Darling. So for the input tubes, I will run them in the same operating point as Bob Danielax, and here what we do is that instead of the single cathode bias resistor at 200 ohms, we are using 400 ohms resistors, that is double the resistance, because it needs to drop the same voltage, but only one tube is operated by it instead of a pair of tubes. That's why we had to go to twice the value. And you will need two resistors, one for each tube, and it's a 2 watt rated coax pair carbon film. I didn't type it there, carbon film, that's important. In all of the cases when I refer to coax pair, it is carbon film resistors, and it's also the same as Kiwame. So when you look the brand name Kiwame, it is coax pair, but coax pair is the manufacturer, and when you see the rebranded Kiwame, it means that it's probably coming at a surplus price, because you are not getting it directly from the manufacturer but from a resale brand. And same thing, the bias resistors for the power tubes, it is 1.5 kilo ohm for each vacuum tube, and that will be something similar. Eventually it will come a little something more like minus 33 volts, 21 milliamps, something like this, but anything is gain minus 30 volts, 20 milliamps. So one or two, don't worry about that, you will see some variation, never mind. Actually, even the data sheet, when you look at the data sheet, where is it? Maybe here, yeah. So that's the data sheet for the 1626, and it doesn't give you exactly the same points as I have experienced. So when we look at the 250 volts, so this is the volt scale, this is the milliamp scale. So 250 volts, 20 milliamps, so that should give you a minus 35 volts operating point, but that's not exactly how it worked out when I built the amp. But this will work very well. 1.5 kilo ohm resistor for the cathode bias, and to get that you will need two 750 ohm resistors, 2 watt each, same coax pair carbon film, 750 ohms, two resistors in series. So here comes the leg of the tube, then one resistor, one more, hit the ground. Yes. So you will need 4 of these resistors in total. For the 400 ohm, for the input tube, you will need 2 resistors total. And you need to bypass these resistors, and you can use them unbypassed as well. Some people prefer the sound when you do not bypass it. If you do not bypass it, you will lose about half of the output power. So then you will have a quarter watt amplifier, and but some will say the purity will increase. So you can try it without the bypass capacitors if you have really efficient loudspeakers. If your loudspeakers are about 90 dB, then I would recommend to bypass it. It's mandatory. If you have like 100 plus dB efficient, you can try without the cathode bypass caps, but when you do your order, then put your bypass caps on the order too. They're just a few dollars each, and so you can put them on if needed. And I'm saying put it on the order because if you would need to make a separate order, the shipping cost would be bigger than the parts cost to order those bypass capacitors. And the important difference, because on the baby version I also use these ELNA Silmic 2 bypass capacitors. So these are ELNA Silmic 2s. I have catalog numbers. These are catalog numbers for Mauser. They carry these, and for the baby version we used lower voltage rated. I think we used like the 10 volts rated or something like that for the input tube, and something like 50 volts rated for the power tube. And here we are using the highest voltage rating, because when you go higher voltage rating, it especially like the 50 volt rated and then the 100 volt rated ELNA Silmix, there's a big jump in quality when you hit the 50 volt and when you hit the 100 volt. So get the 100 volt version and use 100 microfarad for the power tube and 220 for the input tube. So you will need 2 plus 2 of these cathode bypass capacitors. And now let's go into the power supply, and I will make that into a separate video so that the videos do not get too long. We shall continue soon. Bye bye.